Our histories are powerful, as we are affected by the telling and retelling of a story. Yet power is not always akin to truth. We should be wary of words that are used often, though are void of much action. Imagine instead allowing the truth that can be found in the compassion of the soil, in the abundance of the trees, in the depth of the valleys that echo, in the purpose of the rivers as they carve themselves over stone. Imagine reconnecting to the silent sound of life whirling on within us, the nature of that which is lived and cycled and sacred. Reflect on everything that has been made possible here. Imagine acknowledging what the land has been made to endure, forced to carry the secrets we've held that are now buried and cold with a fiery rage. Give thanks for its capacity to extend forgiveness and grace. Imagine how this land carries the immensity of the stories we've told. There is so much wisdom in the sounds and history of the earth. Listen and hear how the winds can speak calmness into our hearts and cause us to become billowed all in the same breath. There is so much wisdom to be known. May we find the strength to humble ourselves and the faith to listen, to discover how we may reconnect to the soul.
It's a privilege for someone to share their story with me. You know, that's private. That's something that affects them. And to share that with me gives me knowledge, it gives me wisdom, and it gives me an understanding of, you know, I really want everyone to understand that we need to stop and think about how we interact before we react. I cannot believe how brave and strong some people are. And letting me be a part of that journey, or even letting me know about that journey, is an honor. You hear stories about generational trauma, and you can never fully understand it. Even when you hear the story, you can't fully understand it. I think it initially began because of the stress on the ER system and the OD crisis. So folks came together and thought, how can we offer services to people who are vulnerable and meet them where they're at, as well as creating a bridge for the gaps for services to people who aren't accessing. The Moose is essentially a platform for nurses, doctors, social services, mental health, to support folks who are either vulnerable or in that place where they're not quite sure if they want to go into a brick and mortar building. You know, when folks have been traumatized by the system, or, you know, maybe they've been in the hospital when they're young and that was traumatizing for them, all the way to residential school type settings. The fear around not knowing what to expect, or someone saying they're going to do something and not having the ability to follow through, or that fear around what's going to happen if I tell them my story. Am I going to lose something?
A lot of times we run into people who are in the midst of a crisis, and it can take longer to get them to the sort of help they want. And if it's not easy and as accessible, they tend to kind of turn down that sort of help. But with the Moose van right downtown during our foot patrols, it's really effective. Leanna's a vibrant, energy-filled person with some great ideas and a great vision. And I think it was that energy that put the Moose van together and made it an actual reality.
I feel like Canada has always been known as a quote-unquote free country. However, we've had our struggles, we've had our problems, we've had so much pain and genocide. I would like to see Canada be another platform where folks can come together, you know, disregarding the color of their skin, their gender, how they identify, and just have the ability to come back and change the word of human. My dream, my desire is that we're able to come together differently as a community. It's important to know that as humans, it's not one person that makes a difference, it's all of us. This is a project that is about everyone. So I just feel that we need to be more mindful. We don't know what's happening for people, and we don't know what has happened for people. If we were just a little kinder, you know, if we were just able to kind of stop and think for 5 seconds, how do we gain trust with people that have been so traumatized by so many systems? This is where maybe this is a small step, because it's a bit of a system, but it's not the same system that we've utilized for years and years and years. You know, it's about being open. It's about saying, thank you for being here. I'm here. What do you need?
Imagine extending grace and understanding to those brave enough to allow themselves to be seen, drenched in their authenticity. Imagine all of the ways that we are connected, if not by the rivers that bleed through the land, then by the complexity of the simplest things, such as our breath. With every expansion of the chest, we may cultivate space for each of us to release love. Listen to how the oceans cradle us, and hear how we may allow each other to be cared for, without resistance or judgment. Hold space for the stories that speak of courage and of pain, of love and of destruction, of healing and of death. There is space for us to acknowledge all that the land and its children have been made to bear witness to. Sharing our stories is an act of kindness, but do not always rush to fill the space with our craving to feel heard. Remember that the quality of listening a story receives is just as significant as the tale being told. There is power in the action of acceptance and the effortlessness of allowing. Empathy, perhaps, is the softness of the flowing river until it rushes in as purposeful as waterfalls, almost in absolute silence. There is a collective responsibility to understand the true nature of life, in discovering the truths of who we are and where we have come from, and how we may continue to be embraced.
I create music instruments that have a certain quality in their sound. My feet become roots and just go down and connect to the core of the planet. And I imagine that every blow on my heart is actually permeating, moving, pressing, molding, expanding the metal disc.
It has to be done over and over and over again. It's the sound that tells me where I am and where I need to go and how much more work I need to do. Then once I take it through that stage, I turn it around, and whatever I did to expand and bring it back in by hammering on the surface. And through my will force is just permeating the metal with the energy that I'm connecting with through the singing.
I hold the conception and belief and knowledge that there is no part of ourselves, physically at least, that is not part of this planet. We're just made of the same material. In a sense, it's like our essence, some people call it spirit, the soul's aspect of ourselves is borrowing the material from this planet to have a human experience. So I connect with that energy, and I hold this energy, I allow this energy to permeate me, because I want the instruments that I create to hold the healing energy of our planet.
Now, once the gong is flat, I just basically turn the rim, so it's got a little bit of a curve, and that's the beginning of the tuning process, bringing the sound in and just, making it more contained.
I move from the anvil to a table which has got silica sand in it. So I position a hammer in the center of the gong, and with another hammer I just create a nibble right in the middle of the gong. So what that does is alters the pitch of the core sound of the gong, and it just makes it come to the fore. It's almost like they have spirit, soul, and body. So every gong has like a tonality to itself, which is given by the harmonic sequence that you find within the structure of the sound of the gong. So you have a core tone, then as you move towards the periphery, you have different tones that come in, and then the sustain of the gong, how long it lasts, is more like its physical body.
Also, I listen to the tone. There is a lot of aliveness in the tone, a lot of vibration. So essentially, this is almost ready. I need to bake it and then make a holder and a mallet, and then it's ready to go.
After the gong is tuned, I bring heat to it. I bake it. It just crystallizes all the work that I've done, just solidifies it, encases it within the structure of the gong. And when you play the gong in a space, it's like it really expands and just totally permeates. My passion is essentially of creating something that is in harmony and tuned in with our planet, with our carrier, with what's holding space for us. It is a passion, and it is something that I want to do to be able to feel connected.
Imagine a deeply cultivated mindfulness, the space it requires to be present exists in the abundance of the land. It is at times challenging for us to imagine the vastness of ourselves, but we may come to understand it in the diversity and tenderness of the land that stretches from far and wide, that knows no boundary as it spills and rolls and dips into itself, allowing us to sing and dance and rejoice in the crevice of its being. As we are nourished by the land, what do we give? And still we are accepted, as this land, a living thing, recognizes itself in all that is breathed as it is breathed, by the veins of the rivers and the lungs of the trees and the heart of the oceans.
So when I was a kid, I really wanted to be a golf pro, and I was competitive, and really that's what I wanted to be. But then my father gave me his camera, and I went to Lake Placid, and I picked up the camera. I took my first photo in a place close to where we are today, and I knew instantly that I wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be a nature photographer, but I also knew that that wasn't going to be an easy task right off the go in my career. So I came back and I said I wanted to be a photographer. During the time in my university and college, I started my business. I started in the film industry, so I understand the filming aspect and video. Not many people were in that field at the time, in the middle range. You know, there was high end and in the production end, and there were very low end cameras that were available. So I came out of school with the intention of being my own boss, being my own business person, and having my own business in photography. But I knew that I had to work a little bit harder at gaining the reputation. I was very young and I was a woman, which wasn't a very easy task to combine both of those and be taken seriously. So I began my career in video production, and then as I got known and I was able to get myself out in the community, then I started to bring the photography aspect into it. It took a few years to get to where I am right now, and 30 some years later I'm able to really do what I love, and it's be out here with the wild creatures and the beautiful scenery and try to create images that can help people see the world that we have to live in and that we do live in, and hopefully encourage them to go out into nature and experience and appreciate what we have. I've always loved nature. I'm obviously massively passionate, and I would say slightly obsessed with nature and wild creatures. And even when you have a squirrel running up to you or a chickadee behind you, whatever animal it is, it can be a polar bear to a small bird, I just feel a connection to them. And I love people and I love photographing people, but when I'm out in nature and you can hear the birds sing and you can see the beauty all around us, it just is so connective, and I wish more people went out for walks. And I think during COVID, that's what a lot of people have done, and they've started to experience what we have in our own backyards. I've always had a passion for nature. My parents were birders, and we traveled and camped all across Canada, so they were always encouraging us to be outside. And their passion for birds, I think, transcended to all of us. And it meant going out, and it meant the search. It meant the going out in the hunt for these little creatures that live amongst us, and to learn about their behavior, to learn about species. And I have a young son, so right from the get-go with him, we'd go out birding and we would feed the chickadees and we'd connect him to nature in a way that we knew he would always appreciate. And I think it's so important for all of us to see and appreciate what we have to lose if we don't take better care of our planet. I have traveled all over the world. I've photographed, I've visited 7 continents, but I think my favorite place is Canada. It's ultimately where I come back to all the time, and discovering my own backyard and spending more time just discovering little trails around my home city, or even if I had a choice, I would stay in Canada. And the Arctic is the best kept secret of the world, I think. And I know it's not easy and accessible to many people to visit the Arctic, but it's a place that is so full of tradition and culture, history, and from the people to the landscape to the wildlife. It's extraordinary. But I think ultimately Canada is my absolute favorite place to photograph. Ultimately we're always looking for that bucket shot, that defining image as a photographer, and I've had a few, and one is of a spirit bear, a Kermode bear up in the Great Bear Rainforest 2 years ago, and I was able to be mere feet away from him, and he came up and he put his head under the water, and of course they're fishing for salmon, but he put his head under the water for quite some time, and I hadn't seen this behavior before. And he was standing, it was like he saw me on the river's edge, and he came up and he stood right in front of me, and he put his head under the water, and then he lifted his head and he shook. And what he was doing was feeding on the salmon roe at the bottom of the rivers. I think the next great photo for me is whatever's in front of me. So there are places that I want to visit, there's animals that I want to photograph. I want to explore more of Canada too, and try to tell the stories, the hidden gems like the herring wren in BC, and maybe explore a little bit more of Yukon and the Northwest Territories. So how I imagine my Canada in the future is brighter and better. We have so much to learn from over the past and the history, that now that I see that my 16-year-old is growing into this young man, I want the future to be brighter and better for all Canadians. We have a lot to lose if we don't take better care of this planet, and I think we're learning along the way the importance of protecting our planet and galvanizing together as a whole We have the ability to make our Canada better and brighter. How can you not be astounded by nature and these creatures that offer us these opportunities, even a red squirrel? As long as he doesn't jump on my back. That kind of freaked me out.
Imagine this land as it lays itself bare, unapologetically, as the rain pours and the oceans thrash up against us, as the land remains present and unaffected by our perceptions of it. Imagine this land as it teaches us of life, of how things are often everything all at once. The more deeply we immerse ourselves in her reflection, the more clarity will come. As the sun rises unaffected, we may come to understand ourselves. As the sun rises, so too rises another day for us to shine. The land teaches us of our light, even as the trees are rustled by the whistling of the winds, and their leaves all fade to color before falling to their knees, painting a picture of the world almost completely at peace. As the solstice brings the life around us to rest, we are reminded that nothing is truly that separate or lasting, that in all of our stories, this land is the only thing that's always ever been, allowing us to sing and dance and love and rest. It is that very nature of allowing that we must begin to reflect. As the seasons pass and the land allows itself to let go again, so too should we allow the passing of our emotions. As the cherry blossoms whisper sweetly under the smile of the crescent moon, opening themselves as the frost melts again in the morning, they bloom mischievously, only to be mourned as we are braced by the sun that rises unaffected.
Kind of hid for a while my Aboriginal culture. It was a search for identity. Just because I come from this tiny little town, just because I'm Aboriginal or two-spirited, it doesn't mean that the glass ceiling can't be shattered. I know there's room for me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
To see this room, a room full of people who came to see my work, it was like walking on air. You know, just the immense amount of support and love and the acknowledgement. It was the ultimate validation. You're welcome.
Levi Nelson grew up just north of Pemberton, BC, in Lillooet Nation, where his family's passion to preserve First Nations culture sparked his creativity and brought out his artistic side.
My great-grandmother, Adelina, left it to my mom to carry on the tradition of like dancing and regalia making, like leather work. So I kind of grew up on my mom's sewing room floor.
He started making doll dresses for his sister's Barbie dolls, and he would come and give me a hug and he'd say, "Mom, one day I'm going to be famous, and then you won't have to work anymore."
Everything was for us. And so seeing how hard she worked, it made me want to give back to her, to be able to take care of her one day.
Before one can take care of others, many say one must first take care of themselves.
I always kind of struggled with my own issues with identity and not feeling good enough. I went through this really depressed stage where one day my teacher just said, "I want you to know that, you know, being Aboriginal and being gay and being a teenager, those are three really wonderful things, and you should be proud of that." And nobody had ever told me that before. Like, up until then, those three things were, for me, something to be ashamed of. So in the complete opposite, an adult, a female, a white person told me that it was okay to be who I was, it was okay. It took a long time for me to find pride in my own culture and way of life. There was the Aboriginal Youth Ambassador Program through the Squamish Lillooet Cultural Center, and learning to introduce myself in my Uqalmich language and standing in the circle with my people and singing our traditional songs and dancing and then showing that to the world and having them admire our culture was sort of a gateway into me saying, wow, this is something to be proud of, and I love that. To be able to share my culture is just, it was a gift.
And then it was time for him to share his gift with the world. While searching for his identity, he realized that throughout his life, he had always been painting.
I decided to put together a portfolio and apply to Emily Carr University, and I got in. A lot of my work incorporates a lot of my own personal feelings and beliefs, and it addresses identity and what happened to my people through the assimilation process and the government stepping in and interfering with cultural practices like language and dance and traditional way of life. I want my work to be able to have a message to also be a source of strength for other Aboriginal people.
In terms of the piece, Nations in Urban Landscapes, that was a very nice surprise for me in the fact that after meeting him, I encouraged him to come by the museum and we set him up to do sketching of all our historic masks. And then when I saw this work, I noticed that he had incorporated 3 of those masks into this street scene, which resembles the downtown east side of Vancouver. So it was a very fascinating hybrid of the past and the present. He has a very bright future.
Now, in his final year at Emily Carr, everything seemed to come together.
Having my own exhibit, especially in Whistler, in my own big backyard, it's the ultimate validation of all the work that I've done leading up to this point, all the painting and the tireless hours in the studio and 16-hour days, and then being able to show all of these people who have come just to see my work. It's the ultimate high.
I knew that it would happen someday, that he would be famous. I'm really happy and proud of him. He's come a long way, and he has found himself.
It's just amazing to be able to have a voice finally in today's day and age that was silenced for a long time. This is who I am coming through my work. If I died tomorrow, I'd be happy.
Imagine our capacity to create, to allow the full expression of our being to pierce the hearts of others. Just as the sky paints itself in violet hues and we bask in awe of the sunset, the taste almost of citrus, as the sun wakes and rests, same as the chest rises and falls. Imagine being at ease with the fullness of our identity, just as the mountains crash through the clouds with full intensity. So too are we lifted by the land, grounded in the wisdom of the trees that breathe into us as we enter the openness ablaze. Imagine where we may belong in the midst of it all, as we surrender ourselves to the gentleness of the river that ripples under the caress of the birds congregating in silence as they bend the air before us. Remember, same as the soil that lays at our feet, we are sacred with a story and breath of our own. In the reflection of the land, we are free in our wholeness.
Traveling for me is the most valuable life experience you can ever have. I'm originally born and raised in Germany, and I came to Canada in 2008, and ever since it has been my home for me.
The best when you start hearing the sound of boiling water.
My name is Melanie Vogel. I'm currently hiking the Great Trail, also formerly known as the Trans-Canada Trail, from Cape Spear in Newfoundland to Victoria in British Columbia. For me, travel means creating stories, meeting people, learning about the culture and tradition of a country, and also experiencing your true self.
Good morning, everyone. I woke up way too late.
I find only on the road you can be the best of yourself, and that's a wonderful thing to experience.
Yeah, it's all wet from my breath. -5 degree came with a little bit of surprise, but it's beautiful outside.
I did survival training, I ran, I biked, I read up on thru hikers and their experiences. I read up on their safety, on how to survive the winter in Canada. But you can really only prepare so much for it. The rest is actually all either learning by doing it or, and actually mostly bringing the right mindset to the trail.
Time to get up, make coffee. No, wait, I don't have coffee anymore. Are you coming with me? Hiking across Canada? Yeah, I will see.
So far I've been almost 1.5 years and over 6,000 kilometers into this journey. I started my journey last year, June 2nd. And yes, it can be quite exhausting. There's a lot of challenges that I have to face.
Like courage, so is fear a constant companion with me in this journey. It doesn't mean that I'm necessarily attached to fear. I actually learned that in nature, fear is allowed to pass. However, in moments of perceived danger, it's fear that's keeping me highly alert, cautious, and observative. So this is to those men who think this is fun to make awful jokes, or maybe it's not even a joke, towards women. There was one moment in this journey, just this summer, where a man approached me inappropriately. And it's this kind of fear that a lot of women can relate to because it's so ingrained into a woman's psyche, and that is the fear of men. Why are you not staying with me? And I come and look for you later, knowing that I'm just about to go into the woods.
It's not about that risk itself or the challenge itself.
This scares me. This scares me. You know what this is? This is a big shit. And you know what? This is for you. This is...
It's how you take it, how you react to it, and how you handle it, how you are prepared for it.
Thank you, wonderful people in Quebec. Province number 6. Hello, Ontario.
If everything would run smooth and perfect, then it would be quite boring and I would have no stories to tell. But it's those risks that you're taking that spice up the whole trip, yeah.
After days and days and days and days and days of gray sky, it turned blue today. It's a good day to meet the spirit of Terry Fox. It's a good day to celebrate 1.5 years on the trail. And it's a good day to finish my stretch or my walk along Lake Superior.
I've met people on my journey who asked me, so you're taking 2 or even 3 years out of your life. This experience is such an incredible life lesson that you can't buy.
Right now I'm facing a new challenge, going into a winter in the prairies. I'm not sure if I can do it. I may have to stop, but I want to try.
I planned this journey to take about 2 years, but now that I'm in this journey, it will probably take 2.5 or even 3 years. One of the reasons being that in Edmonton, I can make the decision to go up north to the Arctic Ocean. And ever since I'm in this journey, I'm more and more drawn to this idea to really walk from ocean to ocean to ocean, like from the Atlantic to the Arctic to the Pacific Ocean.
Imagine the privilege we hold in being planted here, as we are overwhelmed by the beauty of it all, while the land gracefully includes us, while we cultivate our lives on fertile soil. This land is one of opportunity, as freedom flows in from the Atlantic and washes up the rocks on the shore. Is it possible to be both grounded and drowned all at once? I've wondered before. If everyone feels like that, at times, breathless, how powerful it would be if we each had a chance at catching our own breath. If we could stop for just a moment and consider each other in the simplest of ways. If we could match each other's rhythm. How there might be pain in that, profoundly so, that catches us like the roaring winds of a storm and then releases us by the wisdom of allowing. There is room for us to acknowledge the things that keep us up at night. We may find what frightens us the most is refusing to name our fears. There is enough light for us to shine it on those things that creep up from the darkness of the sea. And still, there will remain space for us to cultivate joy, to recognize that life is intimately as it is, welcoming us to live just as we are.
I'm Uzma Jalaluddin. I'm a high school teacher in one of the Toronto boards, and I'm also a writer. So I wrote these 2 novels, Aisha at Last and Hannah Khan Carries On. They're both romantic comedies set inside a close-knit Toronto Muslim community. When I was in university, I just realized that all of my extra jobs had to do with teaching. I was just always tutoring kids, or I was working as a camp counselor, and I realized I just really like people. I like chatting with students, I like working with parents, and it's a job that I really enjoy. So I was born and raised in Canada, and specifically I grew up in the east end of Toronto in Scarborough. And Scarborough was a very diverse, immigrant-rich neighborhood. I grew up surrounded by people who had come to this country from all over the place. So I grew up around multiple different cultures. I attended public schools in Toronto, and I feel like a lot of my global yet local upbringing is a result of that. I've lived with my parents, and my parents immigrated from India in the 1970s. So they actually arrived. My mom has this story. She says that she flew into Toronto and saw the CN Tower being built. So that's how long ago they came in. And when they came to Toronto, because they didn't have any family here, the community became their family. So they were very active in the mosque, building the Islamic Foundation of Toronto and the building behind me, the Islamic Institute of Toronto. And that sense of community was really passed down to me and my younger brother. The sense of just giving back to the community, being part of the community, being productive and being a good citizen was really drilled into me from a young age. And I hope my children will also take that to heart. I'm Canadian, and I'm really happy and grateful to be Canadian, and my children are Canadian. And my mom always says, thank God we moved to Canada instead of staying in the United States. The US is a great country, but I think we're a lot happier here. A lot of the themes that I write about in my novels are about family and community. So both of my novels are set in Scarborough, and sort of inspired by my own upbringing. So I grew up, as I said, in a very close-knit community, close-knit neighborhood, and I felt very comfortable there. I felt as if I belonged. The fact that I am a visible Muslim, the fact that I wear a hijab on my head, has impacted basically every aspect of my life. I started wearing hijab when I was 14 years old. It was a very personal decision. I choose to remain a visible Muslim woman, someone who does wear hijab, because my faith is very important to me. And I'm very fortunate to live in a country where overall we do have a sense of religious freedom. And I walk with my faith every single day. And sometimes I don't even think about it because it's become such a big part of my life. And sometimes other people remind me about it because of the hurtful things that sometimes people say to me. But it is part of who I am. Removing it would feel strange. I hope that my work resonates with readers across the country as well as hopefully around the world, because I write joyful, optimistic stories about people of color. My characters have nuance, my stories are funny, they resonate with a lot of people because they make them laugh, and they ultimately are very optimistic. The horrific murder of the Afzal family in London, Ontario a few weeks ago completely devastated the Muslim community locally as well as across the country. After the six men were murdered and were gunned down in cold blood when they were praying in a mosque a few years ago in Quebec, and then to have a family out for a walk, which is such a normal everyday thing, especially during times of COVID, to be murdered for no other reason other than someone had decided that they looked visibly Muslim and therefore deserved to die, is a sobering reality of some of the hatred that does exist and simmer just beneath the surface in Canada. It's not part of my Canada, and I hope that this incident will trigger a lot of soul searching of the impact of the toxic narrative about certain communities in Canada.
Christian, Buddhist, everyone together today.
One of the things I've always loved about Canada, my country, is that I think at heart a lot of Canadians, most Canadians, do have that sense of community. I hope that as we continue and grow as a nation, that we will keep that in mind. Let's take care of each other. Let's be kind to each other. And let's recognize that we are all part of this great nation.
There is a truth that exists in the experience of being uprooted and then born again, someplace that reminds you of how much you do not belong. Imagine how often we seem to forget that wherever we stand, we are planted once more. There is a feeling you carry when pieces of yourself are at rest in the ocean, a feeling of being weighed somewhere on the edge of. And still the land embraces you, where the water meets the shore. By the abundance of the soil and the grace of the morning sun, you cultivate anew and plant the remains of old roots from which you once grew. There is a story buried in the lives of the diasporic, a history so deep and dark, so twisted and misconstrued, so woven by strength and love and despair. Though the waters continue to welcome us and wash our bodies up like treasures from the ocean's floor, blue and crimson and broken yellow sea glass, we come together to build a mosaic listen to us bloom and hear our song of resilience. Listen to us dance and heal as we stand to break the height of the waves, crashing in all around us.
Soyez les fous ou fanatiques, peut-être loup, la rhétorique, démagogie et parole où ça pique, tu fais le sage ou l'amnésie.
Mon nom est Yao Vikoyi et mon nom d'artiste est Yao. Je suis originaire du Togo et né en Côte d'Ivoire. Je suis arrivé au Canada en 1999. J'étais en Côte d'Ivoire à ce moment-là. Je suis arrivé, j'avais l'âge de 12-13 ans à peu près. Mon arrivée au Canada a été plus ou moins une surprise, ou pas plus ou moins une surprise, a été une surprise parce que lorsque je suis arrivé au Canada, je ne savais pas que je venais pour rester au Canada. Ça a été essentiellement avec les événements qui se passaient en Côte d'Ivoire à ce moment-là. Ça a été un mouvement familial, toute la famille, mais ça a été sur une idée, on part en vacances. Nos parents nous ont dit qu'on partait en vacances en fait. Donc on est parti en plein milieu de la nuit, on a pris l'avion sans trop savoir où est-ce qu'on allait. Et les fiches d'embarquement étaient remplies par les parents. Et puis on arrive à Amsterdam, on fait la journée à Amsterdam et ensuite allez hop, on arrive à Montréal. De Montréal on prend un bus, on arrive à Ottawa, on se retrouve dans un appartement. Tu dors par terre tes premières nuits et une semaine après, je demande à mes parents quand est-ce qu'on repart et mes parents me répondent « repart ». Vous commencez les cours dans 3 semaines. C'est comme ça que je me suis retrouvé à Ottawa et 22 ans plus tard, je suis encore là. Donc ça a été, c'est comme ça que je suis arrivé. Bravo.
Dans un monde de fabulation, bientôt à en perdre la mémoire, duquel les deux avaient raison.
Déjà aussi à l'école, ça a été très difficile déjà au début. On s'entend, j'arrivais, je viens d'une autre culture, on me faisait comprendre que j'avais un autre français aussi, un français international. Donc il y avait une autre culture franco-ontarienne aussi à laquelle que je ne connaissais pas du tout. Dans la cour de récré, ça parle anglais, en classe, ça parle français. Donc ça n'a pas été facile. Ça n'a pas été facile comme intégration au début. Et ironiquement, moi, mon intégration s'est faite par le biais de l'art.
Sans même savoir ce que l'on est disjoncté. Fonce tout droit vers une impasse disjonctée. Je suis pas le seul, la race humaine disjonctée.
Aujourd'hui, je dirais, pour moi, quand je dis que la musique, c'est un outil de changement social, c'est parce qu'on arrive à... Je dis souvent que je suis chanceux comme artiste parce qu'un artiste a une voix, un artiste a un public, un artiste a des gens qui sont prêts à l'écouter. Donc oui, c'est important d'utiliser cette plateforme. Bon, on utilise cette plateforme pour divertir les gens, mais c'est aussi important d'utiliser cette plateforme pour parler de choses qui nous importunent, de choses qui nous rassemblent ou de choses qui nous dérangent tous ensemble. Donc aujourd'hui, pour moi, ma musique, le thème central à ma musique, c'est l'humain. C'est l'humain, c'est les émotions, c'est ce qu'on vit, c'est ce que je vis, c'est ce que les gens autour de moi vivent. C'est les réalités communes qu'on a, que moi je me permets de mettre en musique, c'est les émotions communes qu'on a que je me permets de mettre en musique. Donc autant que je vais parler de racisme, de sexisme dans les chansons, que autant que je vais parler de faire la fête et de danser, autant que je vais parler de rêver par exemple au futur, de ce qu'on veut devenir demain, etc. Et je ne me limite pas justement à un thème spécifique, je prends vraiment l'humain au central et je me dis qu'est-ce qu'on vit tous ensemble. C'est sûr que quand je dis que ma musique a trait vraiment à l'environnement social dans lequel je suis, je sais par exemple que l'une des chansons que j'écris et qui a beaucoup marqué les gens, c'est Étrange absurdité, où je parle de cette réalité d'être noir au Canada par exemple. Et de me questionner à savoir est-ce qu'on est si loin de nos voisins du Sud et de tout ce qu'on voit chez nos voisins du Sud et comment est-ce que ça se reflète ici. Et mon expérience en tant que telle qui a été autant positive, qui a été très positive en général, mais il y a eu des moments aussi qui ont été très négatifs et principalement en termes d'intégration. Ça a souvent été ça le problème, de pouvoir arriver dans un lieu, éviter les stéréotypes, que ce soit même dans l'industrie de la musique. Quand j'ai commencé, déjà dès que tu dis je fais de la musique, automatiquement on dit ah tu fais du rap, parce qu'on regarde ta carrure, on regarde ton visage, on regarde ta couleur de peau, puis on dit tu fais du rap. Non, je fais un peu plus que du rap, comprenez. On a besoin de travailler 10 000 fois plus pour pouvoir prouver être au même niveau que les autres ou pour pouvoir prouver que nos intentions sont bonnes ou quoi que ce soit.
En vérité, j'étais fort,
Moi, j'estime que le Canada est un pays, et au futur, je l'espère, parce qu'on voit comment le Canada change. Je regardais les statistiques qui disent qu'il y a plus de 250 ethnies au Canada. Et Morin disait, si nous cultivions les convergences plutôt que les différences, il y aurait la paix dans le monde. Et je pense que moi, ce que je vois dans le futur du Canada, c'est vraiment cette communication-là. C'est d'ouvrir les chantiers de communication crus que ce soit positif ou négatif, mais qu'on puisse en parler. La première étape pour régler un problème est réaliser qu'il y en a un. Et qu'on puisse rejoindre toutes ces communautés-là, parce que je pense qu'il y a beaucoup, du fait qu'on est plusieurs, il y a beaucoup de ghettoisation, où c'est très sectaire, où c'est très communautaire. Mais je pense qu'on a tous à gagner, à échanger, à partager, à comprendre c'est quoi les réalités des autres. Parce qu'on dit on a peur de ce qu'on ne connaît pas. Donc plus je te connais, plus, et on a besoin d'être exposé au moins 10 fois à quelque chose pour que ça devienne familier. Et je pense que c'est quelque chose qu'on devrait, dans le futur, j'espère voir plus. J'espère voir plus de ces mélanges-là, plus de ces échanges-là entre les différentes communautés qui enrichissent ce merveilleux pays qui est le Canada.
Pourtant jeté dans la peau et jeté dans le cœur. Étrange, étranger, absurde, absurdité. Unis dans la solitude collective de nos unions sans aucune perspective. En un index, en un clin d'œil. Nouveau symbole national d'une partiale journée de deuil. Des histoires racontées que personne n'arrive à expliquer. Des bouts de nouvelles que l'on a tricotées. Une couverture qui n'offre aucun abri. Médiatique.
J'ai beaucoup d'espoir pour le Canada. Je pense qu'on a tout à gagner. Beaucoup de positivisme dans ce que je vois pour l'avenir du Canada aussi. Et je pense que aussi longtemps que la société civile et nos politiciens, on continue d'avoir des dialogues et on continue à échanger et qu'on pense vraiment au bien-être de l'ensemble et non à nos intérêts personnels, je pense qu'on a... Et au Canada, je le vois souvent, on est capable d'avoir certaines conversations qui sont difficiles à avoir. Et ça pour moi, c'est le bon signe que ça va aller. Comme je dis, la première étape pour résoudre un problème, réaliser qu'il y en a un. Et si on est capable de réaliser qu'on a un problème avec les communautés autochtones, qu'on a un problème avec les communautés racisées, si on est capable de réaliser tout ça et d'avoir ces conversations qu'on fait en ce moment, eh bien j'estime que oui, on est déjà sur le droit chemin.
Ouvre tes oreilles aux pensées soleil.
This land is a symbol of hope, of the courage it takes for us to open our hearts and to experience life as it is, not simply how we've imagined it to be. Life exists in the simplest moments, in the kindness we extend to our neighbors, in finding what was once lost, in the laughter shared between old friends, and the patience it takes to cultivate true self-love. We carry within us the wisdom of the land that plants us all as equals and waters us generously as we grow. Be kind to yourself and accept others as they are. Be inspired by those around you who ignite others with their light. Take time to rest and to reflect. Hear the truth that permeates the noise, and listen to us sing and dance and rejoice, and hear how we are loved. There is hope in our capacity to reconnect, to cultivate our communities through a reconceptualization of this land and of our relationship to it, to our own genuine authenticity and unique contribution to the cycle of life. For as long as the land offers us the mercy of regeneration, there remains hope for our capacity to heal and to do so collectively. Imagine this Canada